Hello, everybody. This is Tim Anderson, Programming Coordinator for the Florida Film Festival. Thanks for joining us for the Shorts Q&A for program number 1. I hope you guys loved the movies, and I hope you voted for the audience award for your favorite one. Just to let you know, there was a technical glitch, and we're going to join this Q&A in session, but I wanted to make sure that you all knew that the filmmakers for Wiggle Room, Marie, 5 Minutes, Swim to Steven, Swipe, and Sproutland are joining us. So thank you guys again, and enjoy the Q&A.
And then, but she already passed the age that can act this story. So we have to cast someone else for this project. And from the very beginning, we were very convinced that we want to cast an actual transgender actress. So yeah, it took us a very long time to find Jane, that's our lead actress. And she brings so much to this story. She doesn't have a lot of acting experience before this, actually, but she's very, very open to this project. Yeah. And this project ended up become, I think, a mix of her life's experience and the other actress friend I know. It's like a mix of both of them, their life stories. So yeah, a lot of the situation we have is the actress actually experienced that in her life. So that's why she brings so much emotions to this project.
I think it brings up a good point. You know, we spend so much time in festivals, especially nowadays, talking about representation and making sure that, and you hear a lot of this pushback, people saying like, you know, you need to be casting trans performers to be playing trans roles and things like that. And it's not knocking that a great actor, cis actor could do these things. It's just that there's something that can be brought into a character that you can't do if you haven't personally been there and experienced that.
Yeah.
And so I'm just really pleased that this film's playing. I think it's beautifully shot too. It's really gorgeously shot. So.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to have a very, very great talented DP and production designer to work on this project.
So Sam and Julia, Wiggle Room is unexpected. It is tense. It is funny. Your female lead is incredible, and she just picked up an award for the film. Well deserved for sure. This is also a kind of another film where my primary thing when I think about watching it is why tell this story. Because I liken it to essentially like, you know, the worst waiting room experience you've ever had in your life is like, but now you have to watch someone else go through it.
Yeah. I mean, it came from a few things. The reason we wrote it was a friend of ours suffered an injury that resulted in paraplegia. And so we wanted to create a character that he could see himself in and relate to and feel empowered by. But we also really wanted to center that character in a universal story. And I think what is incredibly universal is the hell of insurance agents and agencies. And I'm actually Canadian, so I don't understand American insurance.
You're lucky. You're so lucky.
Right. I mean, I've lived here for 10 years now, so I didn't even have health insurance for like 5 of those years, and now I do, but I still don't understand it.
Nobody does.
Yeah, it's not designed for you to understand.
Exactly. And that all the energy went into Wiggle Room, which was this combination of, you know, this horror. I think someone described it as like the blackest of comedies, because those experiences when you're sitting in a waiting room and your time is no longer yours, it's like it's almost laughable. It's that infuriating. So that feeling we really wanted to capture in the film. And so I'm glad that you felt that.
That helped.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, I can't speak for my other programmers or anybody else on the call that's watched the movie, but I feel like there's like, it should be like a raise your hand if you just wanted to sit there and watch her let him die.
Yes.
If you were like cool with me, like, you know.
Yeah. Like that.
So I think that speaks volumes to ever having to either make a phone call about your insurance or actually have to talk to somebody in person.
Yeah.
Well, it's also, I was just going to say, go ahead.
This is what happens with Zoom. No, I was going to say it's funny because that moment was not ever the twist that we really thought people would catch on to. It was the ending that we always thought people would feel different about. And so that was actually not until we screened it for people where they kind of had that moment of like, wow, I was not expecting her to do that.
Yeah, it was completely over. We did not think of that at all. Like, just wasn't part of like the main goal of what the objective of the film, or you could say, or something like that. So yeah, it was brought to light with always when people view it for the first time, they see things that you've never seen. You know?
I think what happens in the scene is that you allow it to go on long enough that you believe the audience believes that we actually are going to watch it happen till the end. Yeah. It's like the opposite of what happened if everybody saw Promising Young Woman.
I was going to say the same thing.
Which is that it's going on so long that you actually believe it's not going to happen in that movie, but in this movie, it's the other way around. Well, let me come on to Amy for that one as well. This is like, you hear that like, this movie's thirsty.
Like, oh my God, embarrassing.
Like, this is great. We laughed our asses off.
Thirsty middle-aged women. Oh, is there anything more embarrassing? No. Go on, yeah.
We laughed our asses off, and I feel like this one to me is about the casting too. Like, she's gold. Like, where did you
made the movie? I worked with her on something that she wrote, and we met through our mutual manager, and she had me direct it a few years ago, and we just loved working together. And I've just been waiting to find a story to cast her in again, and this one occurred to me after I took my young son to his first swim lesson.
See, I wasn't gonna ask. I was gonna wait for this to just come out.
Yeah. What's the disclaimer they always say? Any resemblance to persons living or dead is purely coincidental, and
yeah, we just the moment in the bathroom between the two of them too is what I think is really phenomenal about that scene is not only is it hilarious and also wildly embarrassing to almost be watching as the audience, in terms of what you feel for her as the character, but they have phenomenal chemistry that makes the scene kind of like work in a way that you're like, you guys can hook up right like now in the bathroom, like we're good.
Yeah, that was super important to find an actor who had chemistry with Diana. And I also know Avi just from being comedic actors who do a lot of commercials in LA. And Diana and Avi have known each other for years. They actually did another short film that did the festival circuit by a different director a few years back. And when I saw that, I was like, let's just ask Avi to do it. You guys are great. They're like, Hepburn and what's his name?
Tracy.
Yeah.
Tracy.
They've just got it. Yeah, they've just got great whatever it is on camera.
The rapport's really nice. The tension between them and his like whole, I think we hooked up at this concert back in the day. Like, it's just fantastic.
Yeah, once you're in your 40s, which was sort of this film I came up with the story as a sort of way to process entering that decade. There's a whole life behind you that a lot of stuff happened. Sometimes you get it confused with other things.
Absolutely. Well, before I open up to you guys, to kind of let you have at each other a little bit, Matthew, Kat, Stephen, anything you guys specifically want to ask or jump in on?
Yeah, I mean, I think I probably have questions for everybody, but I don't want to monopolize everyone's time. But I did want to ask if Julia and Sam, you guys, you have an incredible movie with an incredible star, and there's a lot that I admire about it, of course. But the thing that I loved the most was how you reined in. Like you have this woman who's going through something, and we in the audience our blood is boiling watching her go through this. And I know that as a guy in the audience, I knew that I wanted her to have some kind of victory you know, like, and I think Tim touched on that. Like, we all kind of expected her to, or wanted her to let the guy die.
Wanted,
yeah. And so when she doesn't do that, it almost felt like, you know, I still kind of wanted her to have some kind of victory. And I'll wrap it up. My point is, you gave her a victory, and I don't want to spoil it, even though I imagine everybody watching this has watched the movie, but you gave her a victory that was so emotionally satisfying without being unbelievable. You know, like if suddenly all the doors had opened and her claim had been immediately recompensated or whatever, that would have been fake. It would have been false. It would have left everybody kind of flat. But the victory that you did give her was so satisfying and still like very much in the realm of possibility. And I was wondering whether during the production, during the writing or any of this, you had to rein yourself back, like you have felt an urge to give her a bigger victory or anything like that.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And what I thought of immediately was the ending. We always knew we wanted to go this direction, but we had a version of the edit where she was, I guess everyone's seen it, like
I'm sure, yeah.
If you're watching the Q&A before having watched any of the movies, you're doing this wrong.
I had on Instagram post photos of the ending shot, and I'm like, stop it. But there was a moment where we had her even more gleeful, like her face was even more gleeful, and it was Sam that was actually like, no, she needs to be more melancholic. It's a quiet victory because she's won the battle, but she hasn't won the war.
Right.
And that's the experience of when we go to these places.
You never actually get what you want, you know? It's like if you go to the DMV, do something, you go to an insurance place, we found in our experiences that maybe you'll get a door will open to go to get some progress in your claim or whatever, but you're actually never walking away with what you've intended to come there with. And so that was kind of always the idea, is that she's never going to get what she wants. And I think that we just wanted whatever she had to be extremely personal to the guy that she's taking it from. And so that's, you know, and I think there's an absurdity to anybody who has a bunny in their office, right? But I think that it was a way to show something, the one and only thing that he cared about.
The one object he showed any humanity for.
Yep.
But also, I think we wanted to end with that bittersweet feeling, but you know, there is no way I could possibly solve or give any kind of ending that would actually solve that place and those feelings. And I just so it's like kind of the smile, but you kind of, as it sits with you more, you kind of think like, oh damn, you know.
I think it would be somewhat inauthentic for sure, and far too Hollywood, and probably would have made us all roll our eyes a little bit had he just you know, approved her claim.
Yeah.
Right.
So what I think
was so great was that I thought that's what was going to happen when he was running after her, and I was like, oh darn, okay, well, all right. And then when it didn't, it gave you like 5 degrees more satisfying because you had tricked us.
I like it to see it's the idea.
Had a change of heart, which was just like didn't feel authentic.
Our a friend of ours who's a comedy writer, she described the end. She was like, it felt like a romantic comedy. He was chasing after her, and I was like, in the rain, and I thought he was going to apologize, but so I like that people bring those associations to it.
Yeah, sure. For sure. Well, that's a perfect kind of opportunity to let you guys sort of talk to each other about your projects. Anything that you want to ask one of your fellow filmmakers about? I'd love this. This is really a cool thing we get to do on these. So, feel free to jump in at any time.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Wiggle Room, which I loved, I watched it after David, and I was like, is this a theme of like crazy white men in red running into people's offices? I was like, what the fuck? I actually though, I had a question for Christine, because I mean, I have a question for everybody, but I like sometimes getting into the nuts and bolts and try to figure out how these things work. I watched your project like 3 times. And the first time I watched it, I missed the bruises on the neck. And for me, that's like such a crucial element into your story. If you miss it, you don't know what the hell's going on. You're like, is she getting back to make sure the eggs are not like overdone? Like, I didn't know. And then when I watched it the second time, I had that piece of information, and it just changed everything for me. And I was like emotionally invested in it. I knew what was going on. That phone call had so much weight. Could you talk about the decision? I loved how you weren't heavy-handed about the bruises. I missed it because I missed it, not because you did anything wrong. But can you talk about your decision about how, if you maybe had other ways of approaching it, about giving that information to the audience?
Yeah, I didn't want to be, as you said, heavy-handed with it. So, I mean, for us, it looked like pretty prominent on her neck. But what I was trying to do was get, the conversation that he has with, or she has with the guy we don't see in the beginning in the kitchen. Yeah. I wanted to create I wanted to create that tension there where that he is the one who is, someone is causing her pain and this is the person, or there's tension between them. But yeah, I mean, in filmmaking, sometimes there are like little moments like that where the audience misses something and then the whole film is like, I mean, thank you for watching it again, for actually going back and reviewing it, because it is subtle, yeah. And it's more prominent at the end when she's having her phone call. But it is, yeah, I in my mind, it seemed like really, prominent. So I don't know what to tell you more about.
No, it was prominent, but I had missed it, and that's the only reason I brought it up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. There's always like this, I mean, we can all talk about it, opening it to the floor, just like there's always like a detail, something, that either it's too much or too little, and how do we manage it? And also, there's also other variables during the day that happen, and you're like, oh, this space isn't exactly what I thought it was going to be, and like, how do you pivot at the right moment? And so yeah, it's just a lot of little things like that gotta manage all day when you're directing.
I mean, the film has the confidence to not have to tell you really anything about what's going on, and then it manages to tell you everything you ever needed to know.
It's interesting because with some shorts, neither is good or bad. It's just I'm the kind of person who kind of wants the viewer to be kind of like figure out what's happening slowly. But yeah, I mean, I guess I'm hoping, that sorry, there's a lot of noise happening right now.
It's Zoom. We're used to it.
Because the house is just too noisy. But anyway, yeah. But I'm very impressed with the program, and I'm very grateful to be part of this group.
We're thrilled to have it.
Yeah, and I had seen Wiggle Room before also, and just was really impressed. And knowing, I have friends who there's a challenge to go in the real world, and there's ableism all over the place. And I just think that like, that film had so many layers that I'm just, really impressed with how you combine all of the different layers into this one short. Very impressive, yeah. I mean, with most every film here, just so layered.
I have kind of one other question for Cynthia as well, that I've been thinking about early on, which is that, tackling narrative and the ability to shoot scenes over again and kind of get the performances the way that you want them to be. How jarring was that for you, or maybe it was super easy, as a filmmaker that's not just observing anymore, but is sort of orchestrating?
Well, one of the reasons I have been moving into narrative is that I found myself with documentaries, and obviously I've done 2 decades of just documentary directing. And I just found myself increasingly wanting to have those entrances and exits, and, sort of casting the right time of day to have that scene, and to think about the light, and to be a lot more proactive as opposed to reactive. And, and that's a slippery slope with documentary filmmaking.
Sure.
So my challenge actually was continuity. Because I did this, it was just the kind of thing where in documentary, people can like cut their hair and you can kind of jump ahead in time.
Sure.
And I shot most of this prior to the pandemic. And then as I was editing, realized that I needed to redo some things. So then went back and matched some shots where then people took off masks and, and was able to cut it sort of 2019, 2020. But next time I will have a continuity. I'll have somebody with me. I'll have scripts.
Script super.
That was big. That was a big thing for me. And then I'm just super fascinated by the group of like the casting, because the casting is so strong in these films, like so specific and strong. And of course you cast in documentary, but I was really blown away by the casting in general in all of these pieces.
I have a question for you. How did you, Cynthia, what was the conversation between you and the non-actors? Like, how did you prep them for the lines and the scene?
Well, the main woman was going to walk into her life. And so that was a challenge. There's a scene where she finally is able to see images of her husband in old video projected on the wall. And that was an all-night shoot where we went all night until daybreak, and it was just me and the DP, and one of her sons was sort of off to the side because it was just so real, and everybody else was in cars in her driveway for the whole night. So I think probably it happened more slowly for me because they were non-actors. Like, we had to do it probably, the time was extended.
I mean, were they uncomfortable? Like, how did they react when you said, okay, let's do that again? Because like with non-actors, it's hard to,
They wanted to do right. And she in particular, there were just a couple of times my main character was like, I've given you everything I can. What is it that you want from me? Like there were a couple of moments like that. Like, I've given you everything. Like, just tell me what you're missing.
I'm a professional actress, and I feel like that sometimes with directors. So, I think that's across the board.
You ever tell that your directors have given you everything?
It's interesting on Cynthia about your movie is that, I knew the gist of that it was basically hybrid, but I didn't know how hybrid it was. So I went down a rabbit hole, like after I watched it the first time, trying to figure out who wasn't acting, who is this guy really real? Like, how much of this is true? But the two people that you have cast in that just work at like the grocery store where she gets the coffee are phenomenal. I was trying to find out all about their careers, and they have no careers. They're like
they're regular baristas.
They need to be. I'd watch a movie about this too, like spin-off.
Deanna, our lead, had never acted before as well, and we kind of approached her to sort of in that documentary way where the character was really her. But it's interesting because we lucked out because she was so comfortable around the cameras and being on set and working across a professional actor. And I think that's what's interesting. I don't know if you ever noticed, maybe, I always think about the beauty of documentary is that eventually whoever you're shooting can forget about the camera. And that's how, Streetwise is one of my favorite movies. And in that film, you just, I don't know if these kids would be able to bring that if they had been, like in front of big Hollywood lights and whatever. So did you have a struggle with that in terms of having them sort of forget about the camera and the kind of technical aspects of it? Did you miss that from your documentary work?
I mean, I honestly feel like, you know what, there's no such thing as fly on the wall with documentary. So eventually they do forget, but your presence does change people and change how they react, and sometimes to change the situation. So in some ways it was similar. It's a really good question. Like, what I want to do is to get to a point where I can make narrative films that feel as real as the documentaries that I make. And so this was the first attempt at that. But it's a funny thing because there's some things, when you start something, you feel, okay, I can do that. And then other things you're like, whoa, okay, I need to really work on this. So, so it's a combination. I feel like it came
like
varying
so
degrees.
cinematic or like so narrative film, like magical realism that could only happen, like the way it starts with the people going through the graveyard doing their exercises and the way it ends that way, that feels so like a heightened reality of a thing that would not you wouldn't necessarily see in the doc, not just because of what it is, but also because of the way you shot it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
I
I
have
like
a
the blend anyway.
I have a question for all the directors that work with non-actors, and I was just wondering, like, how much of that are you scripted everything, and how much are you work with the actor and improvise set?
Yeah, Sam, Julie, you want to take a first shot at that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, our film was totally scripted. I would say there wasn't really much improv at all. That's not to say that Deanna didn't have that capability, but I think as a first-time actor, that would have been too much for her. She's an athlete, so she came to it very focused.
Yeah.
And she was very intent on learning the lines. And so I think if we kind of felt like if we came in and switched, like on the big scene with them, we did change some lines the day of, like, but if we let it go too free with her, she wouldn't be able to come to it. Does that make sense?
I think that you before you do this, you kind of think like that. Yeah, non-actors prefer that naturalism, but you actually realize like no, it's really accomplished actors.
Yeah.
Who prefer improv
or more comfortable
in improv.
Yeah, if they're not actors, they're like they have these. It's all these things that I think are going into their head. Like I have to be here, I have to look here, I have to do that. They've never had to do before. You can maybe improv emotionally, but you need a base. I mean, that was our experience. I don't know what you experienced with your actress, but that was our experience with Deanna.
Yeah, Cynthia, kind of the same thing. I mean, how close did they hew to script, or did anybody kind of bring?
It was pretty close. There were a couple of times where people said, "Well, I wouldn't really say that." Like one thing in particular, Beth, my main lead, was like, "Well, if he's going to make me a juice, it has to be a green granny." Like that was very important to her.
Okay.
Like, okay, we'll write that in. He's making you a green granny. Yeah. That like very specific things like that. It was we adhered to the script.
Well, I want to kind of give you guys maybe just a last chance to like shoot something out, and then we can wrap it up. But it's just been incredible to have this collection of filmmakers here. The Shorts Program #1 is so strong. Just really blown away by these films. It's interesting that you guys all kind of do have some similar through lines in terms of the fact that we have a third of the movies here are essentially using non-professional actors in their key role. Lots of really interesting stuff. But yeah, let me toss it back out to you guys for maybe one more question somebody is dying to get answered.
I'm wondering what the hardest thing was for everybody. Like, what was the challenge that the audience wouldn't see that just ended up being incredibly difficult in the moment for each of you?
The heat.
The heat.
I can't tell you how hard when it's 110 degrees and your boom guy is like basically drenched, and it's just, that's the thing that I was saying earlier, where there's so many variables you can't control, and as a director you have to be able to pivot and figure out like, okay, how can we use this moment, but I'm sure I guess it's directing is problem solving a lot of the time, so
filming underwater on a budget is hard.
Yeah.
We couldn't afford one of those fancy cases that you put the camera in, so we had to do like a fish tank situation.
I was just gonna ask, did you fish tank this? You totally fish tank.
It was like a step above a fish tank.
Okay.
And then that last shot, the drone shot, we just had one shot at that, and it was just we did, as my DP called it, we did it skateboard style. It was just me and my DP in the parking lot of an In-N-Out Burger near the 5 freeway, and we had one shot at rush hour for me to drive that car up that on-ramp. And for some reason, the traffic cleared like magic. There were no cars in front of me or behind me for that one moment, and I just floated right onto the freeway and pulled in next to a big rig, and I was like, ah! I love those movie magic moments.
That's movie magic.
If someone doesn't want to talk about what was hard, maybe you can talk about what happened, like the movie god smiling on you. That's fun too.
So, Anthony, you got one? Oh, you're still muted.
Yeah, I know. I've been doing this all day. I had less than 2 hours to shoot the entire thing, and the second location was a location that we had asked if we could shoot there, and they said no. So we snuck it in there, and we just kept buying. We kept buying burgers. So we bought like $200 worth of burgers, and by the end, we thought we were like really slick. And then we got offered the money afterwards, and they were like, "No, we don't want your money. Like, thanks for buying all the burgers." So that was the hard part.
That's great. Yudi, Sam, either of you guys? Come on.
Yeah,
Yudi?
For me, I think the hardest part is casting. Really, I think this story would live or die with my cast. So it's really took me a long time to find an ideal cast. So yeah, and we had so many auditions that we usually won't be having. We, like for maybe a month, I'm having a lot of auditions. So that's the hardest part.
Yeah, she's incredible. The scene where she takes off the wig is just like heart, like, oh, so good.
Yeah, that's actually inspired by her because she, that's her original hair. So
yeah,
we had that.
Sam, Julia, you worked with an animal. There's got to be a problem.
I was gonna say we can second what Yudi said. We almost didn't make this film if we didn't find Deanna. So I'll say that's probably the most important. But having a bunny in a jacket on a moving bus and it's getting dark, and like our DP literally said this might not come out like at all. That was stressful. And we had to keep doing loops, and our producer was driving the bus and he couldn't hear us for some reason, and it was also the coldest, rainiest day in the entire winter that day. So it just wasn't fun. But
I don't know why we ended up shooting in the winter when there's like no daylight. But
also that the bunny got adopted right before we were about to shoot. We had casted the bunny, it got adopted. But and so we had to beg the people to take the bunny after we shot it.
Wow.
In the shoot. So that was
that's.
Cynthia, what's your hard moment? What was your hard moment, Cynthia, that you didn't think was going to happen?
There was a really intense moment the night that I shot Beth in the most that most intimate moment when she was looking at the projectors, where she fell apart and then she pulled herself together. And so that pushing people emotionally in going to the hardest places of their real lives, but then saying, thinking about continuity and we should do that again, or let's switch the angle or the lens. Walking that line between wanting to take care of them but wanting to tell the story in this other way, that was the hardest.
I can imagine. You all are amazing. I'm so thankful that you could join us here for this. Thank you guys out there who are renting the films. They're still available online. You make sure to vote for the Audience Award for the Best Short Film. Once again, ACLAT Law, I want to thank them for sponsoring this. And we'll see you on the next Q&A, and tell all your friends to watch these movies. They're amazing.